white takes one pawn but doesn't take on a6, a system that became very popular for a while in the mid-'80s, Max DeLugy kind of developed it and pioneered it, was to play f3. And this gained quite a following for a while. Basically, white's idea is that after takes, and then he plays e4 and establishes the center with the threat to either recapture his pawn or to expand with e5 and gain a tempo on the black knight. And so this became quite popular for a while. But systems have been worked out against this, and so now I believe you were telling me that there's 2 or 3 ways black can get counterplay here.
It's true, and this system was indeed developed by Max DeLugy, and I remember that I often had kind of big problem how to deal against it, and it was always a big concern for me as a system. Now, as often with Benka, as true with say E3 system, black can simply ignore what white is doing. He can say, well, what a big deal, what's the move f3, what this move does. It's not such a useful move. And black can say, well, let me just play normal chess. You can play bishop g7. White would play e4. You play d6. And here Max found very interesting position of pieces. Max would put his knight on a3, usually not the ideal position for a knight. And then what Max will do, he would bring this knight to now freed square c3 and maintain very firm hold over b5 square. Then when black would take on b5, he would recapture with a knight. Then he would support this a knight with a b knight, now a knight which turned to be b knight, b5 knight with a pawn. And by doing so, he would neutralize black on the queen side.
That kind of took a lot of the fun out of your open tiles.
Of course, you can say big deal, but where white is going to play? White also doesn't have any kind of very good plan. And if black simply wants to stand and kind of play for a draw, it's not a big danger for black. But it takes really fun. White certainly better. He might try to build up his advantages behind those knights and prepare for some, for some opening of game somewhere, maybe eventual b4, maybe he would eventually start pushing his pawns. So what black can do in this position, and of course we took many moves with white, black can try steadily but surely exchange one knight, then second knight, then bishop, and so on.
Then you can bring this one around after your castle.
Exactly.
You can bring this one to here and here, and then exchange one more.
And again, like usually in Benka Gambit, as a result, white will have an extra pawn, but black will have better pawn structure, rooks on A and B file, bishop pressuring B2, close to equality, but still, as practice has shown, and it can be logical also assumed because black in the system did not lose all those tempos for maneuvering his king into artificial castling, that white is slightly better. So unless you want to play, if you play someone who is good theoretician, he probably would play this DeLugy system with knight on a3 and would get somehow superior position. So ideas came into mind, why not to do something, to try to use the fact that white basically loses time with those moves like f3, knight a3, and so on. And the ideas come, why not to play e6? Why not to play e6?
Okay. So immediately?
Probably not immediately. Immediately is also possible. And we can show just to show where various lines may lie. But after e take d5, white plays e5. And this move really leads to mind-boggling complications. It was analyzed on both sides. Interesting ideas was found on both ways. So again, but if you decide to ideas with queen sacrifices for black, interesting ideas, but the other ideas were found by white, it's kind of struggle goes back and forth. So here, if you like mind-boggling complication and want to invest some time into looking into most recent games, you can certainly study this line. However, unless you have so much time to invest in those sharp lines, I may recommend, or I would rather list for you 2 other systems. I would list one system and then kind of recommend or suggest to consider another. At least I would tell you which system I used to play and which system I would prefer whenever I play Benka right now. Great players now I take this pawn. And after e4, they check. Basically, white has nothing better than to play bishop d2. And after b4, white, fortunately for him, otherwise it would be not a problem at all. By the way, see how bishop on d2 prevents queen from defending d5 pawn as a key. If black white can play d5, he would be better. And this is basically the purpose of this check. Black would play b4 immediately without check, but then white would play e5 with advantage. Which purpose of check is to bring bishop to d2. But as we already
Also, this takes away the natural square to c4.
but still bring bishop to d2 while it has pluses for black. It has also pluses for white. And one of those pluses is that now this pawn is pinned. So knight indeed not via d2 but via e3 comes into the game to c4. And this position was played. And basically with, I think on the highest level is viewed to be basically even. That player like Topalov and others were able to demonstrate the equality in normal kind of play. But it's not to say that this is easy equality.
Now, do you prefer to put the queen on c7 or d8 or a7?
It's a difficult question, and no matter really what I would personally prefer, no matter what I would personally prefer, but very importantly, this pawn is on g7. Pawn is on g7. I would really suggest to look at games played by leading grandmasters and try to take a cue from them what is currently most popular. Queen c7, I think, was suggested to Alex Chernin, who is one of the leading experts on Benka, with whom I've helped at some moment to learn Benka, but who is now, because he is more active than I, he is now a really leading expert on Benka Gambit together with Topalov and 2-3 others. I guess Chernin preferred to play queen c7 followed by e6. And he basically viewed this system as good for black, as giving black equality. However, I would like rather to show you, I would say, more interesting system, at least in my view, which I also analyzed with Chernin several years ago when I was still actively playing the system, and which even now both I and Chernin likes. And the idea of this move is we play, basically what I want to do everything we do in normal Benka, like g6, bishop, g7, castle. But I don't want to play e6 too early. Because you remember, if we play it too early, white is able to use the fact that I am not castle. I want first to castle, and then play e6 without playing d6. As you can see, it's kind of similarity to the system with previous line, e3 line. Black saves tempo on not playing d6.
And how does this work?
So I do it, I play g6,
okay,
and
so
white plays e4, and I play bishop g7. And here white has a dilemma. White has a dilemma. Dilemma is he has a choice. He can play e5. And by playing e5, he pushes me to g8. It's true. And usually it's not good for black. But here you see, white has to waste a tempo. White played f3. Now he plays f4. So white, I lost 2 tempos, but white also lost a tempo. But it's still better for white. He lost a tempo, I lost 2 tempos. But he perhaps played e5 prematurely, which black may try to prove. And this is really where the question lies.
So what better way to study chess than to sit back, relax, and watch, listen, and learn how the masters think? Discover the thought processes and competitive spirit of a world champion as Anatoly Karpov guides you through his best games and his selected games of Bobby Fischer. Walter Brown shows you how he won the U.S. Championship 6 times and teaches you how to play the Sicilian. 3-time U.S. champion Lev Albert helps you to understand the Benko Gambit. Proudly presented by America's leading chess video.
Is it move premature, and how much premature? I personally believe that this move is at least partly premature and gives black not advantage, but a good and interesting and equal play after black plays d6. White would reply knight h3. Here several moves have been tried, even most direct bishop g4 kind of pinning the knight, attacking the pawn.
Followed by knight d7.
Yes, but I personally, when I analyze and play, I prefer this move kind of to see what white wants to do. I still keep an option to play bishop g4 later. Certainly I'm not afraid of move like h3, because then I play knight f5 and exploit all those holes on G3 and so on. So like H3, which question mark, knight f5, and this position I think is good for black.
So, Lev, this is really a very interesting new dynamic system that you and Alex have worked out here. What would be logical play from here?
Yes, in this position, I would really like to play this position for black. I think black has a good game, and good game with normal logical move. Black would castle, play bishop g4, then knight f5, and black will have, I would say, at least as much compensation as normal in Benka, perhaps even more. That's why maybe the system is not so popular, because I would say the reason it's maybe not popular is because, first of all, not everybody is willing for black to allow move e5. But when black allows move e5, in this position, many white players don't play e5 because it looks really risky. So white may, of course, we already kind of discussed e5, so what if knight continues in normal fashion, say knight a3? Of course, you can say, well, why it's normal, why it's not knight c3? But you see, if knight goes to c3, the question is where this knight will go.
Yes, on h3, at one moment you might take it if you've played d6.
Yes, exactly. So knight a3, kind of Dlugy's idea. You castle. Now,
say he plays knight e2, I guess.
Knight e2,
would be the next
knight
in
e2.
the sequence.
And now you can play either immediately e6, or basically, or bishop, let's say bishop b7, knight c3, e6, and what you achieve, you open. The d file. If I play bishop c4 now, we'll first take on b5 and then take
Say it takes
exactly yes, and then take on take on d5, and this is kind of position which if
logical play would
logical
be to
play would be a
recapture,
capture. White takes.
But now already you can take here, and then he would like to, from a strategical point of view, he would like to be able to recapture. Takes, queen takes, however, queen a5 check.
Exactly.
And then the situation becomes a little unpleasant.
Exactly, and taking with this with e-pawn is even, don't even do it because after queen
we'll just show this is one of the traps that they can win a game with.
It's a
after
trap,
queen h4 check, winning the bishop.
Yes, so basically I think that the system, if you want to go for sharp variation, which requires some knowledge, but still not mind-boggling amount of knowledge, you can certainly consider playing the system where you play g6, bishop g7, provoking white to play e5. And if white plays e5, you're getting counterplay with d6 and so on. And if white doesn't play e5, then you begin to attack d5 square before white is able to castle. If white would recapture eventually on d5, let's say with b5, knight a take b5, if white recaptures with e-pawn, I think that black gets decent game because now king is because of his king is.
First thing you have to ask is check, right?
Exactly. You should do a check, and here you simply have you would simply have a compensation. You would simply have a compensation. For sacrificed pawn, because say on king h4 you can either play d6 or you can play knight h5 and threatening queen h4 check, winning the bishop, and you do have compensation for sacrificed material. You have compensation for sacrificed material.
Well, for example, just one sample variation. Let's say they play king, for example, say to f2.
Yes.
And then if you play knight here, already queen h4 check is threatened. If they play knight in here trying to fork these, bishop d4 check, and suddenly the lack of development for white is very serious here. At this point, you could continue to just play in the most straightforward manner, something like this.
Exactly. Excellent.
And here they have problems.
Yes.
And a move like queen takes here, maybe you could even play something flamboyant like queen takes h2.
Right.
And after rook takes?
It's over. It will be knight g3 mate.
Yes.
Certainly it's nice
Rook
mate.
takes,
And
knight g3
we'll
mate.
put it on the board.
Yes.
And we wish all our viewers who play with black to get more of such beautiful combinations.